Hey guys! Tonight, we tiptoe into the greasy, crumb-crusted world of medieval junk food. Yes, even back then, people had cravings for crispy, sugary, questionably fried things that probably weren't good for them. You step into a medieval marketplace just after sunrise, where the air smells like wood smoke, roasted meat, and something suspiciously sweet bubbling in an iron pan. A breeze flaps the edges of canvas stalls as merchants bark their wares, and you wander past baskets of chestnuts, wheels of cheese wrapped in linen, and the unmistakable glisten of lard sizzling beneath battered dough. This isn't a quiet night in a monastery. This is snack time, peasant style. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this menu with your modern stomach intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your local time and where you're listening from. It's always lovely seeing where our sleepy little crowd drifts in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your feet crunch over straw scattered on the cobbles, and you follow the scent of something sweet and sticky. At the far end of the fair, under a striped tent, a stout woman ladles a thick amber syrup onto a wooden board and presses crushed almonds into it with her palm. Honey nut clusters, she calls them, and hands you one wrapped in waxed parchment. It's chewy, teeth-sticking, and somehow both crunchy and soft, like a medieval granola bar if you threw it into a bonfire first. Children race past with cones of candied nuts, their fingers stained red from a coating made of boiled fruit skins and fermented beet syrup. No refined sugar here, just centuries of improvisation and a deep, unapologetic affection for sweetness. You sidestep a juggler and duck under a banner where a man sells fried dough balls stuffed with cheese curds and spiced onion. He calls them throttle balls. And after the first bite, you realize the name's not entirely a joke. They're hot, salty, and dense enough to function as a weapon, if thrown hard enough. You wash it down with a warm cider from a nearby stand, brewed with herbs and left just fizzy enough to make you blink. Historians still argue whether fairs like this were the birthplace of Europe's street food culture, or if everyday markets quietly filled that role. But one thing's clear: when people gathered, someone was always selling something greasy. A teenage boy offers you a crusty wheel, a thin slab of bread soaked in animal fat, fried, crisp, and sprinkled with what might be dried leeks, or, more likely, cabbage leaves, pretending to be leeks. It shatters between your teeth like an overdone tortilla. Still, you nod in approval. There's something oddly satisfying about food that was clearly invented to trick your taste buds into ignoring everything else. A few stalls down, you meet a man cooking on a slab of hot iron flat cakes of barley, oats, and honey, flipped with a wooden paddle and sold warm in folded cloth. He tells you they're good for chewing slowly while walking, which turns out to be code for this: will glue your molars together until further notice. He's not wrong. You sit near a barrel to catch your breath, watching a dog sniff an overturned meat pie, and a woman beside you offers a fig rolled in cinnamon and dipped in syrup so dark it looks like ink. You try it. It tastes like Christmas, if Christmas had been invented in a barn full of bees and mud. You like it more than you want to admit. Not far from you, a few traveling players share a meal, boiled egg halves drizzled in vinegar, a wedge of crumbly cheese, and sticky buns baked with currants. It's simple, but it's food you can eat with one hand while juggling apples with the other, ideal for wandering performers who don't want to drop their supper mid-act. A bell rings out from the town gate. More carts arrive. One sells strips of dried meat dusted in mustard seed and clove. Another offers what looks like a pancake folded around mashed lentils and fried in dripping. You wonder aloud if this counts as vegetarian. The cook shrugs. Depends on the pan, he says. You linger at a corner booth where children queue for something called apple strings, thin slices of apple rolled in flour, fried until crisp, and dusted with crushed herbs and a pinch of sugar, if you're lucky. A boy offers you his. You trade him your second nut cluster. It's a good deal. He runs off grinning as the market fills with clamor and wood smoke. You lean back and take in the scene. All around you are people eating with their fingers, licking honey from wooden spoons, chewing bread so hard they practically hum with effort. It's not refined. It's not subtle, but it's satisfying. And in a world without refrigeration or restaurants, these snacks are a small comfort, a moment of indulgence in a hard, dirty, often hungry life. You rub your sticky fingers on your cloak and sigh. One market, one morning, and you've eaten more salt, grease, and unidentifiable filling than most peasants do in a week. Your stomach gurgles gently. You tell yourself it's contentment. But just to be safe, you eye the apothecary's booth across the road. A chalkboard reads, "For upset bellies, dried mint, powdered fennel, and a firm walk." You drift toward the center of the fair, and that's when it hits you a smell so sweet, so sticky. It clings to your nose and tugs at your stomach like a child pulling your sleeve. There, under a faded red awning, a merchant stands before a bubbling pot of something thick and golden. Edip salad lein drizzles the syrup in slow circles over a pan of flat cakes, then tops it with tiny dried flowers. You lean in closer. He says it's honey wine syrup, boiled, with rose petals and a touch of mint. You say nothing. Your mouth is too busy watering. He offers you a slice of what looks like a rustic sponge cake, except it jiggles a bit too much and smells faintly of goat. One bite, and you're hit with the overwhelming taste of wildflower honey, crushed almonds, and just a whisper of something smoky. It's delicious, in the way something can be when you've forgotten what preservatives taste like. Sugar, as you quickly learn, was once more precious than gold, imported in hard, grayish cones from far-off lands. It was shaved with a knife and added sparingly to cakes and drinks, mostly by those rich enough to own 2 spoons. You spot one such sugar loaf under a merchant's glass bell, guarded like a holy relic and priced accordingly. Most folk here rely on local sweeteners, thick honey, boiled tree sap, or fermented fruit syrups that toe the line between candy and caution. Children dart between stalls, sucking on honey balls rolled in oat flour to keep them from melting too fast. You see a girl trading one for a small string of beads. The boy hesitates, then nods solemnly. This is serious currency. Nearby, a man fans coals beneath a shallow copper pan. He's boiling down pear juice into a dark reduction, then pouring it into carved wooden molds. Pear sugar. He calls it letting a small disc cool on a plate. You try one. It's tart, heavy, and a little gritty like nature's attempt at a fruit roll-up. If fruit roll-ups left your molars questioning their life choices. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly craved sweetness the way we do today, or if it was more about symbolism, wealth, status, festivity. But the way that small boy guards his honey ball says otherwise. You pass a stand of pastries, folded into spirals, glazed with thick syrup, and sprinkled with something you suspect might be cinnamon or sawdust. The woman selling them says it's a mix of dried rosehip and crushed fig skins. You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. It's sweet enough, she says. You bite into one, and the pastry flakes like dried parchment before melting into a sticky warmth that coats your tongue and then lingers on the back of your teeth. You swear you can feel a cavity forming in real time. Further down the lane, a baker is serving laughing cakes, small, yeasted buns fried in oil and topped with powdered sugar scraped from a cracked clay bowl. You're not sure if the cakes are meant to laugh or make you laugh, but the effect is contagious. A few children are doubled over in giggles after stuffing their cheeks with warm, sweet crumbs. One of them snorts and sprays bits of cake onto the ground. A nearby dog doesn't mind. You pause to try something simpler, slices of toasted bread dipped in honey and layered with soft cheese. The bread is chewy, the cheese a little sour, but the honey ties it all together. It's comfort food, in the oldest sense warm. Familiar. A little messy. You ask if this is a treat or a meal. The baker laughs. Depends how many you eat. Next to him, a man roasts chestnuts in a pan and cracks them open with a tiny hammer. He salts the soft insides, then drizzles them with melted honey butter and hands them to you in a cone of parchment. They're smoky, a little earthy, and warm enough to keep your fingers from freezing. You don't speak. You just eat. In a quiet corner, you spot an older woman selling sweet roots, candied parsnips, beets, and carrots soaked in syrup and dusted with mint. You taste one. It's like eating dessert that pretends it's a vegetable. Honestly, your teeth are confused but intrigued. Later, as you pass a barrel of fermented apple mash, a man offers you a sweet drink in a clay cup. It's sharp, feetsy, and makes your nose crinkle. He calls it spring cider, brewed in his cellar with old apples and younger ambition. You sip. It burns slightly going down. But you don't stop. It's strangely refreshing, like your body recognizes it as something halfway between snack and story. And finally, at the far end of the market, you find a boy frying bits of dough in a pot of oil over an open fire. He pulls them out one by one with a forked stick, rolls them in honey, and hands them to passers-by with a grin. You catch one. It's warm, crisp, and sticky enough to glue your fingers to your sleeve. You lean back on a bench and watch as people wander past, munching, licking, slurping, smiling. Sweetness isn't just a flavor here, it's a moment. A pause. A tiny, edible celebration in lives filled with labor. And even as your belly starts to protest, you reach for one more honeyed thing. Just to be sure, you make your way toward the edge of the fairground, where the sounds of music and haggling fade into the background. replaced by the sizzle of meat over open flame. The air here is heavier, thicker with smoke, char, and that unmistakable smell of fat dripping into fire. You follow it instinctively, like a sleepy bloodhound, chasing the scent of midnight snacks. A man in a leather apron stands behind a row of skewers, each one strung with bits of mystery meat glistening over glowing coals. He fans the flames with a goose feather and grins as you approach. Pig bird. Something in between, he offers, flipping a skewer and sending sparks upward. You accept whatever's on offer. The first bite is crispy, salty, possibly bird, maybe squirrel. It's hard to tell, but it's hot. And that's enough. The outside is singed just right. The inside, chewy and faintly spiced. You're handed a second skewer, this one brushed with a thick sauce made from vinegar, herbs, and what might be mashed plums. It drips onto your sleeve before you can stop it. That's how you know it's good. In medieval towns and villages, street vendors like this were the original fast food joints selling hot, ready-to-eat skewers to anyone with a few coins and no time to cook. These weren't luxurious meals. They were survival snacks. You eat standing up, grease on your hands, ash in your hair, and absolutely no cutlery in sight. A pair of traveling players pass by, tearing strips of meat from a shared skewer. They dip it into a paste of mustard seeds, ground with vinegar and stale ale. Grinning between mouthfuls. Best way to chase off flies and neighbors. One says, historians still argue whether meat skewers were more common in towns or at festivals, or if they were mostly sold near inns for the benefit of travelers. But wherever there was fire and food, there was meat on a stick. You bite into another piece, this one tougher and coated with a smoky, peppery crust. The vendor shrugs. Bit of goat. Bit of yesterday's stew. Maybe. He isn't kidding. Medieval cooks wasted nothing. If it could be seasoned, skewered, or salted, it was fair game. Literally. Next to him, another vendor lays strips of liver onto a flat iron griddle. He dusts them with ground sage, turns them once, and wraps them in what appears to be leaves. No. Flatbread. It's thin and chewy, made from barley and water. Cooked earlier that morning. You try a bite. The liver is dense, almost metallic, but the herbs cut through it. It's not your favorite, but it's filling. You wipe your fingers on a piece of coarse cloth handed to you by a nearby vendor's assistant. She's selling awful pies, small hand-sized pastries filled with bits of heart, tongue, and who knows what, seasoned with cloves and onions. One is cracked open on her tray. The filling, glistening, like jam, gone terribly wrong. You eat it anyway. It's surprisingly good. Around the corner, a young man is roasting bird legs, probably chicken. Maybe not. He serves them on thin sticks, with a side of pickled cabbage in a waxed bowl. You watch a customer bite the meat off the bone in one swoop, toss the stick behind him, and sigh in contentment. There's something primal about it, snacking on meat without plates or etiquette. Just fire and fingers. It's less about taste and more about heat, texture, and getting something hearty in your stomach before the next task. Prayer. Orbral. You perch on a wooden crate beside a vendor who's slicing dried sausage into tiny rounds. Boar, he says proudly, cured in salt. Hung for a fortnight. He offers a few slices, with a dab of garlic paste. It's strong. So strong your sinuses twitch, but flavorful. Rich. And smoky. The kind of snack that lingers long after you've finished chewing. As the sun lowers, more skewers appear, some with mushrooms, others with onions and leeks wrapped in strips of fat. You try one with minced meat pressed around a stick and charred until crispy at the edges. Someone calls it a fire pipe. You don't ask. You wash everything down with a wooden cup of thin ale, lukewarm and slightly sour, but safer than the well water. It clears your throat and helps dislodge a bit of mystery meat caught behind your back molar. A drummer begins playing near the tavern entrance, and a few vendors dance in place as they turn their skewers. Humming along, the crowd thickens, the scent of burning fat and herbs hanging low over the stalls. Everyone's chewing something, holding greasy sticks like medieval popsicles, and as you lick the last bit of sauce from your thumb, you realize something oddly comforting. The joy of meat on a stick is eternal. Simple, messy, satisfying, and completely unchanged by time. You lean back, full but still curious, wondering what new concoction the next alley holds. The smell hits you before the sight does sharp cloves. Earthy nutmeg, and a distinct ginger bite that tickles the back of your nose. You follow your nose like some medieval cartoon character floating toward a scent trail. It leads you to a baker's stall, set back against a wall, shaded by faded canvas and flanked by a carved wooden pig, smiling with suspicious innocence. Beneath the awning, slabs of dark, cracked gingerbread rest on a wooden board like tiles from an ancient ruin. You reach for one and quickly realize two things. It's heavy, and it's hard, like weapon-grade hard. The baker hands you a smaller piece, taps it with a knuckle, and grins. That's how you know it's good. If your teeth don't fear it, it wasn't made right. You gnaw a cautious corner. It's chewy, dense, packed with honey, pepper, clove, and dried ginger root ground, so coarsely it's practically gravel. But after a moment, warmth spreads through your mouth, then your chest. You take another bite. This is a snack meant to last chewed slowly, not gobbled. A luxury and a challenge. Medieval gingerbread wasn't soft or fluffy. It was survival dessert. Something between an energy bar and a medieval mint, packed with spice to aid digestion and, supposedly, revive the spirit. Historians still argue whether it was more of a health tonic or just a festive treat disguised as medicine. Either way, it worked hard to justify itself. Nearby, a woman sells what she calls festival cakes, small rounds of rye dough baked hard, then dipped in honey and stacked in cones. You try one. It's less a cake and more a sugar-covered stone. You nearly chip a tooth, but then you suck on it for a while, and the honey starts to soften. It's like medieval hard candy, but aggressively wholesome. You stroll down the lane, chewing slowly, and stumble across a group of boys with a basket of what look like miniature bricks. They're trading them like coins. Turns out they're compressed ginger cakes, used for barter in some places where coins were scarce, and sweets were more valuable than silver. You finally sit beside a crumbling stone wall to rest your jaw. A girl walks past, offering pepper bites, tiny clusters of flour and black pepper rolled in honey and shaped like acorns. You pop one in your mouth and immediately feel it in your sinuses. "They're for waking up," she says with a shrug. Next to her, a stall offers a gentler option, aniseed rolls. Sticky with molasses and baked in spiral shapes meant to resemble sleeping snails. You suck on one, letting the licorice flavor bloom across your tongue. Grateful, it doesn't try to bite back. A baker shows you how the gingerbread is made: boiled honey, dried breadcrumbs, powdered spices, pressed into trays and left to harden overnight. Some varieties include wine, others just a whisper of mustard seed for heat. It's not subtle, but it is oddly comforting, like a baked reminder that flavor once needed to be bold enough to cut through winter, illness, or monotony. You try a different kind of cake made from almond flour, rose water, and sweetened with a dried fruit paste. It's smoother, softer, and obviously crafted for someone with coin. Noble teeth. The baker jokes. Not made for chewing tree bark. Around the corner, a friar hands out what he calls church spice cakes, small squares laced with caraway and clove, passed to pilgrims as a reward for penance or prayer. You take one. It's dry. Holy. Maybe. But mostly dry. And just as your palate adjusts to the constant drumbeat of pepper, honey, clove, repeat, a merchant surprises you with something entirely different. A soft pastry, filled with warm pear and cinnamon, lightly dusted with nut flour. It melts in your mouth. You blink in disbelief. Experiment. He whispers, "Don't tell the guild." You nod solemnly. Your teeth, thank you. But the hard cakes remain the standard prized for travel. Stored for weeks, even months. They're nearly immune to time. Some were even shaped into animals, symbols, or saints, used as decoration or gifts during feasts. Eat them or admire them. The line was blurry. As evening settles, you find a small fire pit surrounded by traders gnawing on ginger biscuits with strong ale. The combination of spice and malted drink creates an odd harmony, burning and soothing. Like licking fire followed by a damp wool blanket. It works. Somehow. You lean back against a crate. Fingers sticky. Stomach warm. And begin to understand the rhythm of these ancient snacks. They don't coddle. They challenge. You don't consume them, they endure you. And in that spirit, you unwrap one last bit of gingerbread. Bite off a stubborn corner. And let the burn settle you into a cozy Hevihase. You wake the next morning with the faint taste of cloves still clinging to your tongue and the ghost of gingerbread haunting your dreams. As you stretch and wander back toward the market square, the air is crisp, damp with early mist, and heavy with a new scent, something creamy, slightly sour, and, unmistakably, dairy. You follow the trail past a row of sleepy-eyed vendors and find a wooden cart stacked with small wheels of cheese, crumbly curds in linen sacks, and earthenware pots sealed with wax. The woman behind the cart smiles, her apron stained with buttermilk. "Fancy a bite?" she asks, prying the lid off a pot. A sharp, tangy aroma hits you in the face like a dairy-scented slap. She hands you a spoon. You dip into a soft, spreadable cheese, flecked with herbs, parsley, maybe thyme. The taste is fresh and grassy, with a faint barnyard echo. Not unpleasant. Just honest. You spread it on a slice of hard bread. The kind you need to soak in cider before your teeth give in. Cheese, as you discover, is more than food here. It's preservation, protein, and comfort rolled into one. From soft farmer's cheese to hard-aged bricks stored in cellars for winter, dairy was a staple of medieval snacking, especially in regions where meat was scarce. Cheese filled the gap with a satisfying richness that didn't require a cook fire. You try a bit of crumbly white curd, served warm over barley cakes. The vendor claims it's fresh from the goat this morning. You nod and hope the goat appreciated your support. It's creamy, slightly sour, and oddly satisfying, especially when drizzled with a thin ribbon of honey and sprinkled with crushed walnuts. Beside the cheese cart, a man sells butter. Lumps, small balls of churned butter rolled in dried mint, or chopped nuts, served with rye crisps. You pop one in your mouth and immediately feel like you've been punched by a pasture. Rich, salty, and oddly floral. It melts into every corner of your jaw. You're not sure if you're impressed or confused. Possibly both. Somewhere nearby, a wheel of hard cheese is being cracked open with a hammer and chisel. The inside is golden, almost waxy, and smells of hay and stone cellars. You try a flake. It crumbles in your mouth like dusted chalk. Sharp and savory. A man nearby dips his into ale before chewing. Sholdn't it? He grunts. Historians still argue whether medieval cheese was truly aged or simply forgotten until it stopped moving. In some regions, cheese was heavily salted and hung in rafters until it shrank into something the size and weight of a cannonball. These were snacks you earned with effort and possibly dental courage. A cluster of monks arrive at the market with baskets of their own soft rounds of herb-infused cheese, pressed with violets or chive blossoms. Wrapped in leaves for freshness, they hand out samples, bless a few loaves, and move on quietly. You try one of the monk cheeses. It tastes like silence and discipline, but in a good way. You wander into a side alley where a young boy is hawking what he calls milk sugar, essentially boiled milk, reduced down into a caramelized chunk, hardened and snapped into pieces. You buy one. It crunches under your teeth and coats your mouth with a lingering, sweet dairy warmth, like a toffee from a time when cows were sacred and refrigeration was a myth. Then there's the sour pots, fermented milk turned tangy and thick, eaten with a spoon or spread on flatbread. You try a bit and recoil slightly. A woman next to you laughs. It grows on you. You smile and think, so does mold. Still, it's clear that cheese and dairy were the heart of many medieval snacks, not just for nutrition, but for joy. Even poor households often kept a goat or a cow, and used their milk for everything from curds to custards. And during fasts, when meat was off the table, rich dairy snacks became a beloved loophole. You settle on a low stone wall and watch as vendors set up wooden platters of cheese, bowls of thick cream, and small wooden spoons dipped into sweetened curds. One man is selling snow cheese, made by whipping soft curd with honey and herbs into something fluffy and pale. You try it on a wafer. It tastes like a cloud that went foraging in a garden. In the far corner of the square, a pair of children trade cheese scraps for marbles and string. You watch one stuff a hunk of curd into a crust of bread, squish it flat, and chew slowly with great satisfaction. Snack, diplomacy in action. And as you rise to leave, you realize something odd. Your hands are sticky with cream. Your breath, faintly sour. Your lips flecked with salt, and yet you feel warm and full and, oddly, content. There's something timeless about cheese. It endures, like stone walls and lullabies. You walk on, the taste of butter and goat milk still lingering on your tongue, wondering if dessert in this world might also come in a wheel. The sun creeps higher, and with it comes the oily hiss of breakfast, if you can call it that. You follow the scent of something sizzling, something unmistakably sweet, with an edge of smoke and... is that pork fat? Your feet find their way to a line of iron pans laid out over glowing embers, each filled with bubbling lard and slices of something golden bobbing in and out of the grease. You've reached the fritter zone. A woman in a linen cap works with hypnotic rhythm dip. Fry. Flip. Dust. Repeat. Apple slices, thin and slightly browned, are coated in a simple batter of flour, ale, and a pinch of spice, then plunged into the fat like tiny sacrifices to the god of crunch. When they emerge, they're dropped onto a cloth to cool, then sprinkled with a mixture of crushed coriander and dried rose hips. You try one. The outside is crisp, the inside warm and soft. The apple just tart enough to wake your taste buds without scaring them. It's delicious, sweet without sugar, satisfying without being heavy. This is medieval comfort food. You reach for another, then another. The third one burns your tongue a little, but you pretend not to care. Historians still argue whether these fritters were a luxury or an everyday street food. Recipes appear in cookbooks meant for nobility. But frying fruit in batter was also a clever way for poorer folk to make apples last longer or mask when they'd already started to soften. Next to the apple fritters are cherry pockets. Little triangles of dough sealed tight around a filling of stewed cherries, vinegar, and honey. You bite into one and get a burst of tartness so sharp you nearly sneeze. But it balances beautifully against the buttery crust, which flakes apart and leaves a trail of crumbs across your tunic. You dust them off, knowing full well they'll be replaced in moments. You wander further down the lane, and an old man with soot on his apron pulls a tray from an oven carved into a stone wall. Inside, small fruit tarts made from dried pears, mashed figs, and a touch of saffron, if the cook could afford it. You nibble one. The crust is dense and nutty. The filling, earthy and sweet. It's the sort of thing you could wrap in a cloth and carry for days. You find another stall, serving what they call golden moons, thin pancakes made from ground oats and soaked in warm butter before being fried, crisp, and folded over quince jam. The woman hands one to you with tongs. You hold it like a relic, careful not to lose a single drop. The jam is sticky, floral, and just sharp enough to cut through the richness. You're halfway through before you realize your fingers are entirely coated in grease. You lick them, Then you regret licking them. Then you shrug and do it again. You pass a few travelers seated on crates, dipping fig rolls into mulled cider, their faces smeared with jam and grins. One of them offers you a sleep cake, a spiced oat ball sweetened with boiled plums and rolled in flour. For quiet dreams, he says with a wink. You eat it, not expecting much, but the texture is oddly soothing, soft, and dense. Like edible wool, it tastes of wood smoke in kitchens. You do, in fact, feel sleepier. At the edge of the market, a pair of young bakers are testing something new, a double fry. They take leftover fritters, dip them again in batter, and fry them a second time until they puff and crackle. You try one out of curiosity. It's absurdly crispy, like biting into a medieval churro that forgot its sugar. But the flavor deep, nutte, slightly caramelized, keeps you chewing. Children run past with cone-shaped packets of fried fruit peels, dusted in ash sugar leftover scraps that taste faintly of apple and burnt wood. You'd scoff, but you try one. And it's surprisingly addictive. The crunch is delicate, like biting into paper, but the sweetness hums underneath. A baker calls you over to try something he simply calls morning toast. It's stale bread soaked in egg, dipped in milk, fried in butter, and topped with mashed berries. You blink. French toast. In medieval times, he grins. We just call it clever. You nod slowly as you eat. Clever indeed. It's warm and rich and familiar in a way that makes you pause. Somehow, this feels like something out of your own childhood. The past, apparently, had good taste, and just when you think your stomach might raise a white flag, a boy hands you a plum skewer, dried plums warmed over a coal ember, then dipped in honey and rolled in chopped hazelnuts. You don't even try to resist. It's warm, sweet, slightly smoky, and disappears far too fast. You sit on a low bench beneath a slanted awning, your lap covered in cloth wrappings, your hands shiny with butter and fruit juice. Around you, the hiss of frying pans continues, blending with soft voices and the occasional bark of a market dog. People chew slowly, contentedly, heads tilted back, eyes half closed. This isn't fine dining. It's soft joy. It's snack food meant to feed not just the belly, but the soul, one warm fritter at a time. You stretch, yawn, and lean back. Maybe just one more bite. You shuffle away from the frying stalls, lips sticky and fingers glistening, and find yourself surprisingly thirsty. Not parched. Exactly, but your body seems to sense that everything you've eaten so far could use a little help sliding down. You instinctively look for water, but quickly remember in this time, drinking from the town well is like spinning a very medieval roulette wheel. Your odds of walking away with a stomachache or worse are distressingly high. Instead, you're handed a cup of something else. It's warm, foamy, slightly bitter, and definitely not water. A lay, morning ale, to be specific, made from barley and lightly fermented. It's the default drink of the day for most medieval folk, including children. You sip. It's mild, almost nutty, and goes down easier than you expected. Plus, It doesn't try to kill you. That's a win. You wander further into the refreshment zone, past barrels and casks, arranged in loose circles, where vendors call out about mead, cider, and wine water. The drinks are served in wooden cups or ceramic jugs. Glass is too precious and shatter-prone. You accept a warm cup of mead, golden and cloudy, made from fermented honey. It tastes like a floral hug with a sneaky afterburn. Goes well with pear cakes. The brewer says, you nod and pretend you haven't already eaten 3. Historians still argue whether medieval folks drank alcohol out of necessity or preference. Was it about safety? Or the gentle haze that made hard days more bearable? Either way, water was rarely trusted, unless it came from a fast-moving stream or a blessed spring, and even then, you might have prayed first. Just in case, you spot a woman selling watered wine, cheap red wine, thinned with warm water and spiced with rosemary and sage. She pours it into a clay cup and hands you a chunk of stale bread to go with it. Good for the belly, she says. You sip. The wine is thin but flavorful, with a tangy herbal edge. The bread, well, it helps absorb the guilt. Nearby, a young man is hawking what he calls sweet cider, made from fermented crab apples and flavored with cinnamon bark and clove. It's served slightly warm, with tiny bits of fruit floating on top. You raise an eyebrow. Bonus. He grins. You try it. It's surprisingly smooth, with just enough bite to make your nose twitch. There's a tall, bearded monk pouring cups of something called passette, a hot drink made from milk curdled with ale or wine and flavored with nutmeg. You brace yourself for disappointment, but the taste is oddly cozy, like drinking a warm custard that doesn't know whether it's soup or pudding. Off to the side, a group of travelers sip from tall cups of braggot, a mix of ale and honey mead. It's heavier, sweeter, and likely to knock you off your stool if you go too fast. You try a cautious sip and feel your shoulders loosen. You weren't tense, but now you're positively melted. Children dart between legs with clay mugs filled with watered-down cider or berry infusions, called cordials by those who wish to sound fancy. One boy drops his cup and watches it roll into a gutter. He shrugs and licks his fingers instead. You try a barley tea sweetened with a sliver of preserved orange peel, a rare treat in this town. No doubt shipped in at great expense. It tastes like warmth and wealth, and just a hint of citrus mystery. You savor it slowly, feeling your throat unclench. At another stall, a woman ladles out thick, warm almond milk laced with rosewater and cinnamon. It's meant for children and the sick, but she hands you a cup anyway. The creamy texture wraps your mouth in comfort, and you decide this counts as both dessert and therapy. And then there's Hippocras spiced wine filtered through cloth bags, stuffed with herbs, ginger, and sugar, if they can get it. Served cold in summer or warm in winter. It's somewhere between medicine and merriment. You try a cup. It makes your eyes water slightly. But you don't stop sipping. You find a quiet bench beside a cluster of barrels and watch the drinkers drift by. There's laughter, soft song, the occasional snore. One man is gently dunking hard bread into his mead, whispering a lullaby to himself. You pretend not to notice. We've all been there. Not far off, a woman sells a tart drink made from vinegar and herbs, meant to cool the liver and sharpen the wit. You try a sip and immediately regret it. It's like drinking a salad that punches back. But your sinuses are definitely clear now. Another popular refresher is water, mixed with honey and lemon, when lemons can be found. It's more wishful thinking than hydration. But the tang is welcome. You sip. Close your eyes. And imagine you're in a slightly less plague-filled version of this village. And so, the drinking continues, not in a rowdy way, but in slow, steady sips that match the rhythm of the day. These aren't party beverages. They're companions. Gentle, warming, fermented friends that take the edge off life and pair surprisingly well with a fistful of fried cherries. You let the last of the warm cider settle in your stomach. It's calming. It's familiar. It's slightly questionable by modern standards. But in this world, it's practically a hug in a cup. You rise slowly, warmed from the inside by spiced cider and almond milk, and your feet carry you toward a new scent, pungent, salty, and just a little fishy. Not the kind of fishy that warns of danger, but the kind that signals flavor is coming. Whether you're ready or not, around the corner, you find a stall lined with ceramic jars and wooden bowls, each filled with pastes, sauches, and spreads in curious shades of green, brown, and gray. A cheerful man, with no fewer than 3 aprons, offers you a sample on a piece of coarse rye bread. Try the green sauce, he says. Goes with everything, even itself. You do. It's sharp tangy with vinegar, sweetened ever so slightly, and herby in a way that makes your eyebrows dance. Parsley, sage, maybe some garlic. It hits your tongue like a breeze across a spring meadow. If that breeze had spent time in a vinegar barrel. Green sauce, it turns out, was the ketchup of the Middle Ages served with fish, poultry, and sometimes even sweets. Depending on who's doing the cooking, recipes varied. But it almost always involved breadcrumbs soaked in wine or vinegar, mixed with fresh herbs and whatever spice the cook could afford. Historians still argue whether it was born from French court cuisine or came up from monastic kitchens where creative food rules flourished. Either way, you're not complaining. Next, you're handed a slather of something beige and grainy, a fermented fish sauce called garum, or its northern cousin, liquamen. It smells like the back of a dockside tavern and tastes like salt's overachieving cousin. But when spread thin on roasted meat, it deepens the flavor in a way that's oddly satisfying. You take another bite and mentally rename it umami sludge. Beside the jars of garum is a thick black paste the vendor simply calls smoke butter. It's lard whipped with ash, garlic, and a splash of burnt ale. You hesitate. He shrugs. Good on cold pie. So you try it on a leftover meat pie crust. It's smoky, savory, and undeniably strange, but not bad. You wouldn't write home about it, but you might sneak a second bite. You wander toward a long table laid with hard-boiled eggs, slices of dried meat, and bowls of mustard so sharp it practically shouts. The mustard here is no condiment afterthought. It's a main event, made from crushed mustard seeds, verjuice, stale bread, and a dash of wine. It punches you in the face, wakes you up, and politely asks you to come back for more. There's also a deep red sauce, thick and gritty, made from crushed grapes, herbs, and day-old crusts. For fish, the vendor explains, handing you a sliver of smoked eel to try with it. You're unsure, but the sauce masks the eel's eelness and adds a fruity, spiced twist. You surprise yourself by liking it. At another corner of the market, two women are pounding a thick yellow mixture with wooden pestles. It's a mustard, they say, made with strong drink and even stronger opinions. You try a dab on a piece of cold venison. It brings tears to your eyes. But you don't stop chewing. Nearby, a young man presents garlic jam, a slow-cooked mixture of garlic, onions, and vinegar boiled down until it's sweet, sticky, and barely recognizable. It looks questionable, but you spread it onto a crust of barley bread and bite. Oh, it's good. The sweetness rolls over your tongue like caramelized truth. Another pot contains something labeled almond. Spread a thick cream made from ground almonds, breadcrumbs, and honey. Unlike the others, it's gentle, sweet, almost like frosting without sugar. You scoop it up with a wedge of rye cracker and feel like you've earned a break from the punchy flavors. Then there's the spice powders mixed and sold in paper cones, some for stews, others for sweets. One called powder deuce contains cinnamon, ginger, and sugar. Another, powder forte, has pepper, cloves, and galangal. You watch a man sprinkle both on a slab of meat like he's casting a culinary spell. He hands you a sample. It tastes like a medieval holiday. You sip some weak ale to reset your palate. Then try what looks like a paste of mashed dates, garlic, and walnuts. For mutton, the cook tells you, but you spread it on hard cheese instead. It's bizarre. It's brilliant. It's both. You nod solemnly. You notice another bowl of pale yellow goo. Egg sauce, they call it. A mixture of boiled egg yolks, vinegar, saffron, and cream. It's served cold on cold meats. You try it. It's like deviled egg dip's ancient cousin, who still wears a tunic and speaks Latin. And it's not half bad. At the edge of the condiment line is a tray of baked turnips with a thin glaze of honey and herbs. The sauce drizzled over them is just vinegar, mint, and a pinch of mustard. Somehow, it lifts the bland root into something worth chewing twice, possibly 3 times, and finally, as a soft breeze picks up and rustles the herb stalls nearby, you're handed a little biscuit with a dab of something deep red and shiny. It's rosehip jam, mixed with vinegar and sugar. You taste it, close your eyes, and sigh. It's like biting into an argument between a flower and a plum, and they both win. You sit down on a low bench with bits of bread, slices of meat, and a tiny plate smeared with everything from garum to garlic jam. It's messy, flavorful, unpredictable, and you wouldn't have it any other way. The sauces aren't just condiments. They're characters, bold, unapologetic, full of texture and surprises. And just when you think you've tried every possible medieval dip, spread, and spoonful, someone offers you fish paste flavored with fermented gooseberries. You smile politely. Maybe next time. You wander from the sauce stalls feeling pleasantly overstimulated. Your mouth is a kaleidoscope of flavors. Your breath could probably frighten a small woodland animal. And your hands are smudged with something that might be mustard or might be regret. Either way, it's a good time to cool off. And what better place to do so than near the market bakeries, where the scent of warm bread rises like a prayer from every doorway. You follow the smell through a narrow stone archway into a bakery yard, where loaves are stacked like sleepy sentinels along wooden tables. The baker waves a paddle in the air, trying to clear the flour fog as he yanks another round from his oven dark, crusty, and steaming from a crack along the top. He breaks off a corner and hands it to you. It's Vency, hearty, and smells like toasted grain and old forests. This is not your average sandwich bread. This is sustenance, a slice of survival wrapped in a crust that could stop arrows. This one's rye, he says, made with coarse ground grain. A sourdough starter passed down through his family. And water from the cleanest. Well, they know. It's chewy, sour, and pairs beautifully with that garlic jam still stuck to your fingernail. You swipe the crumb through it. Culinary alchemy. Bread in the medieval world is a social structure as much as it is food. The nobility feast on soft white loaves, made from finely sifted wheat flour. The poor, they chew through black bread made with barley, oats, or rye, sometimes even with bean flour or mashed acorns to stretch the dough. Historians still argue whether the hierarchy of bread had more to do with nutrition or vanity. Probably both. You try a trencher, a thick, dry slice of bread used as a plate. It's stale on purpose, tough enough to hold meat juices in stews. After the meal, it's either eaten if you're hungry enough or given to beggars and dogs. You nibble a corner. It's durable, like chewing on furniture. A young girl offers you a sweet bread made with dried apples and a handful of ground coriander. It's softer, with a tender crumb, and you tear it apart like it holds secrets. You ask how often she makes it. Only when we find apples before the pigs do, she says. You pass by a baker, shaping small rolls by hand, twisting them into knots and brushing the tops with milk before popping them into the coals. She calls them sleeper buns. They're better when left overnight, she says. Like people. You try one warm, though. The crust crackles, and the center gives way to a soft middle that tastes faintly of honey and butter. You make a mental note to steal the phrase sleeper bun for your next fantasy novel. A friar appears with a basket of wafers, thin, crunchy, and stamped with religious symbols, originally used for communion. These crisp breads have found their way into street food culture, sold with a dab of spiced honey or fruit paste in the middle. You pop one in your mouth. It's like holy graham crackers, sanctified snacking. Then there's the mystery loaf round, dark, and made with... What exactly? The baker shrugs. Whatever's left in the bin? Peas, beans, lentils, oats. If it grows and fits in a grindstone, it goes in. You try a piece. It's oddly good, earthy and rich, with the kind of texture that keeps your jaw busy. In one corner of the yard, a group of older women knead dough while gossiping over the noise of cooing pigeons. They shape small buns stuffed with nuts and dried figs, fold them like letters, and bake them in the embers. The result, figgy rolls that are chewy and sweet, with little pockets of crunch and whispers of spice. You eat one and immediately ask for another. Another baker slides flatbread off a stone slab charred at the edges, dotted with rosemary, and glazed with oil. "This one's for travelers," he says. "Stays good for weeks if you don't sit on it." You test the corner. It crunches like dried leaves, then softens with heat from your breath. By now, your arms are full of crusty chunks, floured ends, and little parcels wrapped in cloth. You take a seat on an upturned grain sack and survey the bounty brown breads with seeds, white breads with air pockets, sour loaves with a tang like old cider, and rolls shaped like snails. Each one tells a story of who could afford fine flour, who had access to ovens, and who lived too far from the mill. One of the bakers jokes that you haven't lived until you've tasted ash bread baked directly in the embers. No bun. Just dough and heat and courage. He hands you a piece. It's dusty. It's smoky. It's surprisingly soft on the inside. You cough, then smile. He grins back. Tastes better than it sounds. Before you leave, someone hands you a fresh roll filled with sweetened curds and a hint of crushed fennel. You take a bite and let the flavors roll across your tongue like the ending of a good story. This is how mornings should begin, with warm bread, full hearts, and maybe a little soot. You rise slowly, brush the crumbs from your tunic, and tuck the last of the sleeper bun into your pocket for later. The world is quieter now, your belly heavier, your soul just a little bit toasted around the edges. And so, with bread in hand and peace in your step, you walk on. The sun climbs lazily, painting golden warmth across stone walls and thatched rooftops. Your steps crunch over gravel as you drift toward the edge of the village square, where a few carts are just setting up with a quieter sort of food, less fried, less loud, more thoughtful. Preserved fruits, dried things, candies. If one stretches the definition just far enough, a boy waves you over with sticky fingers and a grin too wide for someone selling wrinkled pears and brittle apples. He points to a tray of dried slices, thin rounds of plum and apple laid over cloth, darkened by sun and time. You try one. It's tough at first, but your teeth sink in slowly, and the flavor comes alive, a burst of tartness, followed by mellow, heavy sweetness, like nature's chewing gum. If gum could get stuck in your teeth for an entire afternoon, preserving fruit wasn't a luxury, it was survival with a sweet bonus. In summer, fruits were picked, sliced, and laid on boards in the sun, sometimes smoked over low fires, or soaked in honeyed wine before being dried to keep for the long winter. Historians still argue whether this was more about utility or indulgence. You suspect the answer is yes. Beside the boy's tray is a row of jars filled with sticky preserves: quince, plum, gooseberry, each one thick with fruit and barely sweet syrup. A woman spoons some onto a hard oat biscuit and hands it over. The contrast is divine. The biscuit, rough and dry, the jam, silky and sharp. You close your eyes for a second too long and nearly bump into a basket of candied nuts. These, you're told, are almonds and hazelnuts roasted with honey and dusted in rose petals. One goes in your mouth. You blink. It crunches, melts, and somehow leaves behind the memory of a flower field. You pop another one before you even finish chewing. Next to them are what the vendor proudly calls sucket. That's candied fruit peels of citrus or melon boiled in honey until translucent. Then dried until firm. You try a slice of citron. It's like biting into a jewel that briefly remembers it used to be a lemon. The sweetness dances with bitterness in a way that feels almost modern. You imagine medieval nobles nibbling these after dinner? Possibly. While judging someone across the room. Further down, a vendor offers pastes shaped into tiny animals, date and fig mash molded into birds, fish, and possibly a dragon. They're spiced with cinnamon, cloves, and a hint of saffron, more for show than taste, but surprisingly pleasant on the tongue. You chew on a fig swan and briefly consider whether food tastes better when it looks like it might fly away. A cart displays what looks like a tray of small white rocks. Nope, sugar cubes. Or rather, chunks. Coarse, unrefined sugar. Harvested from sugar cane. Expensive and rare. Used only for nobles. And sometimes for bribing saints. You're handed a crumb to taste. It's sharp, sweet, and instantly dissolves, like a guilty pleasure. It would take someone a day's wages to afford that single bite. You feel honored, and a little sticky. Beside the sweets is a bowl of plum confit, dried plums, rehydrated in wine, and stewed with rosemary and black pepper. You sample a spoonful. It's sweet, sour, herby, and confusing. But you keep eating it, possibly just to figure it out. And then, then there's the wafer-thin marchpane, made from almond flour and sugar. It's rolled thin, painted with edible gold, and shaped into roses, zuns, or even the faces of kings. You try a corner of one, shaped like a lion's paw. It crumbles softly, rich and nutty, with a hint of floral. If wealth had a taste, this might be it. You linger by the stall a little longer, watching as children trade candied coriander seeds and honey drops molded into coins. One little girl offers you what looks like a small marble, boiled sugar and violet petals. She whispers and places it gently into your palm. You suck on it like it's magic. Maybe it is. You sit beneath a low awning, the shadows stretched and flickering from fluttering linen above. In your hands, a biscuit smeared with quince, a pouch of candied almonds, and a wax-wrapped stick of dried pear you're saving for later. A traveler next to you unwraps a piece of sugar plate, a molded disc made entirely of hardened syrup, stamped with a knight's face. He crunches it in half. Taste like victory. He mumbles through sticky teeth. A baker offers you a new treat, tiny cakes made from ground walnuts, egg yolk, and honey, baked until they puff just slightly and then dried. He calls them dust cakes. The name doesn't sell them well, but they melt on your tongue with a richness that surprises you. You take 2 more for the road. As the wind shifts and carries away the last curls of smoke from breakfast fires, you feel a different kind of fullness. These sweets aren't just indulgences, they're reminders that even in a world without refrigeration, artificial flavors, or neon zinyaga, people still craved joy, still shaped fruit into roses, still believed that sugar could lift a weary soul. You stretch your legs, brush powdered honey from your sleeves, and step back into the square, sated, softened, and just a little bit sweeter than you were an hour ago. The village square hums, with a steady rhythm soft chatter. The creak of carts, the crackle of fires, slowly burning down to coals. Your belly is full, your fingertips still dusted with sugar, and you decide it's time to see what the traveling vendors have brought with them today. You follow the sound of clinking pottery and the curious scent of smoke-touched spices, and you find them setting up along the outer edge of the market traders from distant regions. Their stalls an explosion of color and unfamiliar aromas. One man unfurls a canvas cloth lined with neatly stacked parcels leaves wrapped around soft, fragrant cakes. You pick one up and bring it to your nose. It smells of cardamom and something earthy. Maybe dates. He calls it a spice bun from the East, sweetened with grape must, and filled with a paste made of figs and ground almonds. You break it open, and it gives with a gentle sigh of steam. The taste is warm and exotic, like someone whispered a dessert recipe in 3 different languages and made it work anyway. Trade in the Middle Ages wasn't just about silk and swords, it was about snacks, spices, dried fruits, nuts. Even strange new sugars and flavorings traveled across continents, making their way into the hands of cooks who might not know what to call them, but knew how to make them sing. Historians still argue whether these imported treats were common among merchants or strictly reserved for nobility. But the sheer variety suggests at least a little seeped into broader mouths. A woman at the next stall opens a jar of preserved lemons. They shine like gold, sliced thin and packed in brine. She offers you one on a toothpick. It's tart, bright, almost electric. Not a snack you'd eat by the handful, but certainly one that wakes up every inch of your tongue. She grins and sprinkles ground coriander over it. For balance, she says, as if that explains everything. Beside her, a vendor displays a strange kind of nougat white, heavy, and laced with pistachios and rose petals. He calls it turon, and it comes wrapped in paper, stamped with images of mythical beasts. You chew a piece slowly, letting the nutty sweetness dissolve like a lullaby made edible. Then there's the candied ginger, sliced thin and rolled in sugar. The kind of sharp, sweet flavor that makes your throat tingle and your eyes widen. You take a piece, nod respectfully, and pocket a second for when the afternoon slump hits. Further along, you come across a rare treat, a loaf of bread made with saffron. It's crumb bright yellow and dotted with raisins. The baker says he traded for the saffron himself, swapped a barrel of pickled herring and a sack of coarse salt. Worth it, he says. People remember yellow bread. You take a bite. It's soft, warm, just barely sweet, and carries a floral undercurrent that feels like it should be reserved for royalty. You find yourself nodding slowly, as if agreeing with history. Another trader offers sugar fruit, imported from southern lands, tiny preserved apricots, dusted in fine sugar, each one wrapped in a twist of waxed paper. You try one. It's chewy and tart, with a burst of concentrated fruit that lingers. You chew thoughtfully, imagining a time when such a thing would be rarer than silver. Nearby, a brewer pours cups of spiced milk, warm and foamy, steeped with cinnamon and black pepper. You sip cautiously and find it oddly comforting, like the medieval version of a chai latte, minus the Instagram. He hands you a dried fig to go with it. It's filled with crushed anise seeds and honey. You chew slowly and exhale deeply. The warmth spreads all the way to your toes. You pass a cart filled with wooden boxes. Inside strips of fruit leather, sticky and curled, some grape, some plum, a few mysterious combinations that defy naming. A child hands you a bit of one, rolled around a pine nut. It tastes like someone tried to invent candy with only ingredients they could forage, and somehow succeeded. A final stall displays something truly odd, small sugar sculptures in the shape of animals, meant to be eaten after feasts. One is a hedgehog. Another, a dragon. You're handed a goose. It tastes like brittle icing, dissolving quickly and leaving only a vague floral sweetness behind. You resist the urge to nibble the hedgehog, too. As you sit on a low bench and unwrap your stash, the clouds shift, and soft afternoon light filters through the trees. You watch as a pair of children trade a dried fig for a candied orange peel. Someone laughs. A cart creaks be overloaded with jugs of sweetened milk and bags of spice, the flavors you've tried today: ginger, rose, lemon, almond linger in your mouth like echoes from distant lands. They didn't belong to any one place, and yet here they are, nestled into this village's rhythm like old friends. You bite into the last of your nougat and smile. Who knew ancient trade routes tasted like this? Word count 1. 192. The light begins to shift, just slightly tinged now, with that golden hush of late afternoon. Shadows grow longer, stretching lazily across the cobbled paths, and you notice a gentle quiet settling over the marketplace. It's not sleepy. Exactly. Just satisfied. Bellies are fuller, baskets heavier, and attention turns to the comforting routines of winding down. But for you, the journey isn't over yet. You follow the scent of smoke, not fire. Not wood smoke, but something saltier, sharper. And there it is, the preserved meat vendor. Hung beneath the eaves are ropes of sausages, slabs of dried beef, and bunches of herbs strung like garlands. Everything looks vaguely intimidating, but also deeply intriguing. A butcher greets you with a nod and slices a thin strip of smoked pork from a hanging haunch. He offers it to you on the tip of his knife. You take it. The flavor is intense, salty, peppery, touched by wood smoke and thyme. Your teeth work slowly through the chew, and you find yourself nodding. This is the kind of snack that demands patience, and probably strong teeth. Preserving meat wasn't optional. In the medieval world, it was survival with seasoning. Salting, drying, curing, and occasionally fermenting these techniques kept meat edible through long winters and long journeys. Historians still argue whether these preservation methods were more influenced by monasteries or merchants. But everyone agrees on one thing: they worked. You try a piece of dried fish next. Thin as parchment and dusted with powdered vinegar and mustard seed. It crunches at first, then softens, leaving a surprisingly rich umami flavor behind. It's not elegant, but it's deeply satisfying, like medieval trail mix with scales. A nearby table holds smoked sausages tied in rings. Some are spiced with garlic and coriander, others with mace and cinnamon. You bite into one and blink. The spices hit hard. More aromatic than hot, but definitely not subtle. You can taste the dried blood, the preserved fat, the sheer effort of making meat last in a world without refrigeration. This isn't grocery store salami. It's an edible time capsule. Someone hands you a hunter's roll, a compact, leathery sausage meant to be stuffed in a satchel and forgotten for a few weeks. You try a nibble. It's tough, intensely seasoned, and oddly comforting, like biting into medieval ambition, or perhaps medieval anxiety. You move along to a vendor selling pressed meat, which turns out to be pounded, salted beef mixed with dried berries and nuts, formed into cakes and wrapped in waxed cloth. You chew slowly, unsure if you're eating dinner or dessert. Both. Maybe. Then there's the lard cart. Yes. You heard right. A wide wooden board displays little pots of flavored lard, some plain, some mixed with herbs, others with crushed nuts, even a few with dried fruit. You spread a bit on a stale crust and taste. It's rich, heavy, comforting. Probably not doctor-approved in your world. But in this one, it's practically a multivitamin. At the corner, a man offers you jerky strips made from goat, marinated in ale and hung over a low fire for days. You tear into one. It's smoky, heavy, and feels like something a knight would chew while brooding over a broken sword. A woman nearby presents salt ham, served cold, sliced thin, and fanned out over a board. It's glistening, almost translucent in parts. You try a sliver. The salt hits first. Then the fat melts just slightly on your tongue. You understand now why ham was considered a feast centerpiece, even in its preserved form. Next to the meats are bowls of pickled vegetables, onions, beets, garlic, and strange root shapes you can't quite name. You taste one. Sharp, crunchy, refreshing. The vinegar punches through the meat-fat haze and wakes up every sleepy taste bud. A monk offers you something he calls spiced goose jelly. You stare. He shrugs. It's what it sounds like, rendered goose fat, clarified, and mixed with spices until it sets into a savory jelly. Spread it on warm bread, and you've got a snack fit for the cloister. Or a dare. You try it. It's rich, oddly gelatinous, but not unpleasant. You imagine medieval monks eating it with cold rye while praying for digestive forgiveness? Further down, someone hands you bone paste. You pose. They explain it's marrow, mixed with herbs, salt, and a touch of wine, spread onto toasted oat bread. You taste. It's deep, rich, like the essence of meat, with the volume turned down. Unexpectedly, you go back for seconds. As you round the final bend of the meat corridor, you're handed a cube of salted lamb with rose. Yes, rose. Dried petals mixed with brine and crushed pepper. The lamb is chewy, complex, and carries just a hint of floral sweetness. It's weird, but in a good way. You lean against a cool stone wall and nibble on the last of your goat jerky. watching villagers pack away their meat bundles and wipe knives clean on aprons. Everything here is practical, sure, but also crafted with care. These aren't just preserved snacks. They're lifelines, travel buddies, edible art. You brush your fingers on your tunic. The taste of salt still lingering on your lips. And let your eyes close for a moment. The day's not over. But for now, you're sustained, hearty, a little greasy, and perfectly okay with that. A warm breeze tugs at the hem of your cloak as the last of the food stalls begins to close. But a new kind of energy stirs in the air lighter. Playful. You hear the clink of wooden dice, the high-pitched cackle of laughter, and the unmistakable sounds of festival mischief. You follow the noise to a cluster of tents on the edge of the village, where brightly colored pennants flap in the wind and the scent of something sugary and scorched beckons. Here, junk food isn't just food, it's entertainment. Children chase each other with sticky fingers, their mouths purple from some mysterious berry syrup. A juggler flips a roasted nut into the air and catches it between his teeth. Someone in the crowd cheers. This isn't a feast, this is a playground of snacks. At the first tent, a woman offers you a twist of dough fried in oil and dusted with cinnamon and sugar. She calls it angel strings, but it looks like a very medieval attempt at funnel cake. You bite into it, crispy edges, soft center, just the right hint of spice. A little piece of heaven. If heaven involved questionable oil temperatures and no concept of dental hygiene, next to her, a boy, no older than 12, is selling laughing cakes, small round buns flavored with mint and aniseed, baked until they crack open at the top. The name, he explains proudly, comes from the way they split like a smiling face. You try one. It's oddly refreshing sweet. Herby, with a weirdly cooling aftertaste. It makes your tongue tingle and your eyebrows twitch. You laugh. Mission accomplished. Games are happening all around. A circle of young men throws coins into mugs half filled with ale. If the coin lands with a splash and stays submerged, you win a sticky plum tart. If it bounces out, you get nothing but good-natured jeers and a handful of barley tossed at your head. You watch someone win and immediately drop the tart on the grass. A dog appears from nowhere and claims it. Tail wagging like it's just conquered Rome. A jester wanders through the crowd with a basket of mystery pies. Guess the filling. Win a prize. He shouts. You take one and bite in cautiously. Dried apple. No prune. Wait. Is that cheese? Somehow it's all of the above. Plus, maybe a dash of cumin. You guess everything. The jester winks and hands you a dried fig on a stick. Close enough. Nearby, a table holds a series of flavored wafers, thin, crisp, and painted with colored glazes. Each is designed to surprise. One tastes like lavender and lemon. Another, like pepper and rosewater. A third, for some reason, tastes like smoked ale. We like to keep people guessing. The baker says with a wink. Historians still argue whether these food-based pranks like odd-flavored pies and color-dyed sweets were common folk traditions or imported from courtly amusements. Either way, the line between snack and joke in medieval festivals was deliciously thin. A small boy hands you a fool's tart, which turns out to be a pastry filled with mashed turnip and sweetened mint. It's surprisingly good. Though your mouth spends a full minute trying to make sense of it. It's supposed to be confusing. He explains. You nod. Crumbs falling down your front. You stumble upon a roasting spit manned by 3 very enthusiastic teenagers. They're skewering chunks of dough, wrapped around bits of apple, then roasting them until crispy. Once cooled, they dip them in a dark syrup that smells like burned molasses and wild thyme. You take a piece and nearly burn your mouth, but it's worth it. It tastes like caramel's scruffy older cousin. A nearby performer is handing out joke nuts. They look like ordinary walnuts, but some are filled with actual nuts and honey paste, and some have been hollowed and stuffed with mustard. You try one. It's mustard. Your eyes water slightly. The crowd cheers. You're a good sport, someone says, handing you a sweet bun in consolation. You find a spot near a juggler spinning candied apples on sticks. These are not your shiny fairground apples. These are lumpy, coated in a thick glaze made from reduced cider, spiced clove, and what might be charcoal dust. You bite in. It's smoky, tangy, a little wild, like biting into autumn itself. Someone offers you a hot milk bun, a soft roll filled with clotted cream and drizzled with honeyed milk. You take a bite. It melts into warmth. This is not a joke. This is comfort food. Wrapped in wool and baked into a bun. You sit on a hay bale with a plate of laughing cakes, a bite of mystery pie, and sticky fingers from a cider-glazed apple. All around you, villagers laugh, play, snack, and pretend, for just a little while, that the world is soft and sweet and spiced with cinnamon. A puppet show begins, and children gather, clutching small parcels of roasted chickpeas tied in bits of cloth. You hear one girl whisper, "These taste like fire and salt." You try one. She's not wrong, even as the light starts to fade. No one's in a rush. The food, the fun, and the flavors, they're all stitched into this little corner of time, where a festival isn't complete without a bit of mystery inside a pie, a splash of plum juice on your chin, and just enough laughter to keep you awake, at least until the next round of sweets. The sky deepens to a dusky blue. That soft moment when the sun has technically set but refuses to let go. Lanterns flicker to life across the village, casting pools of golden light on cobbled paths and doorways ajar. People begin their slow shuffle home, some humming, some dragging their heels, others already unwrapping a final treat for the road. But you, of course, are still on the move, because this is when the real late-night food starts. You follow your nose into a narrow alley behind the alehouse, where a low fire smolders and the unmistakable scent of charred meat clings to the air like smoke on a wool cloak. There, under a sagging awning and beside a row of ale barrels, a young man flips slabs of meat over a cracked iron pan. He looks up and grins, hungry. You nod. You are always hungry here. He slides a small round flatbread onto a plank and lays a greasy, spice-rubbed cut of meat across the top, something between pork belly and mystery. He spoons on a sauce that might contain mustard, and maybe beer, and hands it to you wrapped in parchment. One bite, and you're sold. Salty, smoky, faintly sweet. You take a seat on a barrel and let your legs dangle as you chew. Slowly, happily, This is apprentice food, the kind eaten after curfew, when the masters are asleep and the air is cool enough to think again. Bits of leftover meat. Salvaged scraps. Yesterday's stew boiled down until it sticks to your ribs and probably shortens your life. But oh, what a way to go. A group of boys lean against a wall nearby, sharing chunks of fried cheese and dipping them into a tin cup of spiced vinegar. It sizzles faintly, and they laugh every time someone winces at the flavor. You try one. It's rubbery, greasy, sour, and you go back for a second. Not far from them, a girl ladles something from a pot over a small flame. She calls it midnight mash, a strange, gluey mixture of lentils, onion, and barley with a swirl of fish stock on top. It smells questionable. You try a spoonful. It tastes like warmth and exhaustion. Perfect. She drops a handful of pickled onions on top and offers you a hard heel of bread to scoop it up. You mop the bowl clean and feel your stomach. Thank you. Another vendor wheels up a battered cart filled with little oatcakes and something he calls mutton pockets. They're pastry parcels, fried until golden and stuffed with minced meat, garlic, turnip, and raisins. You raise an eyebrow. NWW, NWWW. He shrugs. You'll understand. And you do. Somehow. The sweetness lifts the savory right into balance. Historians still argue whether these late-night dishes were invented by the working class or borrowed and adapted from noble leftovers. Either way, they're humble, hearty, and deeply clever cuisine, born not of luxury, but of necessity and nocturnal cravings. A young woman sells bowls of stewed cabbage and apple, thickened with breadcrumbs and served with a dollop of mustard. She tells you it's popular with weavers and mill workers. Fills the belly without costing a week's wages. It tastes better than it looks, which isn't saying much, but you respect it all the same. Farther down the alley, someone grills eels on sticks. Yes, eels. They glisten, split open lengthwise and charred until crispy. You hesitate, but curiosity and the smell wins. It's rich, oily, and tastes almost like smoky fish bacon. You make a face, then you eat two more. By a dark corner, a quiet figure slices rounds from a jelly-like loaf. He calls it cold pudding barley, fat, dried carrots, and pig's blood boiled and cooled until set. You chew. It's strange. Not bad. Just strange. A little sweet. A little earthy. Slightly metallic. You nod politely and chase it with a gulp of weak beer. Two young bakers stroll past with trays of beer bread rolls, stuffed with onion and fennel. Still warm. You buy one. It steams in your hands and vanishes before you realize you've finished it. Someone else walks by, offering candied hazelnuts in a cloth pouch. A midnight snack for the sugar-deprived. You accept, have slowly, and stare into the flickering lanterns, wondering why modern snacks feel so boring in comparison. There's even a small crowd gathered around a woman who makes fire pies, tiny turnovers filled with spiced cheese and hot pepper mash. You try one, take a sharp breath, and promptly hiccup. The crowd cheers. She hands you milk in a wooden cup. You survive. Barely. as you lean against a beam, taking in the soft clamor of people eating in shadows and firelight. It strikes you. This is the most human food of all. The afterthoughts, the extras, the bits that weren't fancy enough for the feast or proper enough for daylight, made magical by hunger, low expectations, and the comfort of the dark. You pop another fried cheese cube in your mouth and grin. Not because it's amazing, but because here, surrounded by jokes and grease and scraps, you feel oddly, deeply full. The alley quiets slightly. Someone starts playing a low tune on a reed pipe. You sit back down, cheeks warmed, eyes heavy. As the last of the apprentice cooks clean their pans with bits of stale bread and pass out the remains to anyone still lingering, and just like that, the village exhales. You step out of the alley feeling like a walking pantry. Your breath still carries faint traces of onion and eel. Your cloak smells like it spent time inside a bread oven. And your stomach hums with the strange calm that follows chaotic meals. The streets have quieted now. Even the lanterns seem to glow a little softer. But you're not quite done. You wander toward the village's edge, where food meets faith, ritual, and the quiet hours of reflection. A low bell rings out from the abbey, and a soft trail of voices murmurs behind its stone walls. You follow the sound to a small courtyard, where a table has been laid with modest offerings, not for feast or festival, but for sustenance, for monks, nuns, pilgrims, and wanderers like you, who arrive when the world is winding down. There's a basket of dark rye loaves, dense, unsliced, and wrapped in linen. You break off a piece. It's dry, but not in a bad way. Solid, stoic, like bread that minds its business and expects the same from you. Next to the bread sits a bowl of soft cheese infused with dill, meant to be scooped rather than spread. You take a fingerful. It's gentle and grassy, with just enough salt to remind you you're still alive. A jug of watered wine is passed around, and you take a sip. It tastes like quiet, if quiet were slightly sour and faintly grape-flavored. You're handed a slice of fast-day pie, a crust filled with ground nuts, herbs, dried peas, and a bit of sweetened lentil mash. It's oddly satisfying, not indulgent, not flashy just enough. You feel like you're eating a meal that respects your thoughts. Even if they're mostly about snacks, these simple offerings are part of what's sometimes called comfort food of the cloister. No meat, no sugar, no clever sauces, just humble staples, prepared with reverence. Historians still argue whether monks genuinely enjoyed this food or simply tolerated it in pursuit of spiritual clarity. Either way, it nourished more than the body. A novice brings out a tray of oatcakes, crisp and round, served with a modest smear of berry paste, sour blackberry mixed with vinegar and a pinch of ground sage. You chew, slowly. It's the kind of food that feels old, like it remembers being eaten 100 years ago in a room just like this. Beside the tray is a bowl of boiled barley and leeks, flavored only with a few flakes of salt. A woman beside you smiles and says it's a recipe from her great-grandmother, passed down through the convent. It keeps the soul grounded. She adds, you believe her. You eat every spoonful. There's a pot of stewed apples and turnips, softened until they blend into a single, mild sweetness. Someone pours a little over your oat cake, and it seeps in like syrup. It's not exciting, but it's steady. The kind of food that helps you sleep. You sit for a moment, sholdn't, and take in the soft shuffle of feet on stone, the clink of wooden bowls, the distant chanting. Even in the stillness, the act of eating feels like a ritual, a reminder that the day has passed, and you are still here. The final dish arrives with little fanfare, a bowl of almond milk gruel, thickened with breadcrumbs and spiced lightly with nutmeg. You dip a spoon in. It's warm, faintly sweet, and coats your mouth with the comfort of nursery stories and wool blankets. You close your eyes and let it linger. You'd mock it in daylight, but now, in this gentle quiet, it feels like everything you need. Someone offers dried rose petals, steeped in warm water, a sort of herbal tea meant to settle the mind. You sip slowly. It tastes like gardens, parchment, and fading light. You thank the nuns and step away from the courtyard, tucking a small piece of rye into your pocket. For later, for remembering. You make your way down the slope behind the abbey, where the fields stretch dark and endless, and the sound of frogs drifts softly from a nearby stream. And here's the strange part. You're not hungry, not even a little, but you feel a strange kind of full that has nothing to do with your belly, like you've been eating memories, or maybe someone else's piece. You find a low stone wall to sit on and stare at the stars beginning to blink overhead. Somewhere nearby, someone is baking bread for tomorrow's market. Somewhere else, a dog dreams of leftover pies, and you sit quietly, with the taste of barley and rose still on your lips, watching the night settle into its slow, sleepy rhythm. You sit a little longer on that low stone wall, the air now cool against your cheeks, and the sounds of the village reduced to the occasional creak of timber or the soft clatter of a closing shutter. But even now, when most stomachs have surrendered, there are still signs of life, in quiet corners after all. Medieval households rarely wasted anything, and what they didn't eat, they found ways to stretch, store, and, most importantly, repurpose. With a bit of energy still left in your legs and a curious appetite in your mind, you meander into a shadowy alley where the scent of fermentation lingers heavy and sharp. Barrels line the walls, lids loosely fitted, their contents quietly bubbling in the dark. A hunched man with wild eyebrows and stained fingertips appears from behind a stack of crates. "Soup beer," he says, unprompted. "Want some?" You hesitate. "It's not terrible," he adds. So, naturally, you try it. It's warm, mildly sour, and vaguely reminds you of something between broth and very tired ale. "It was once part of a barley soup," he explains, "before being drained off, left to ferment, and mixed with spices and a bit of leftover carrot water. A poor man's porter." He shrugs. You nod. Not because it tastes great, but because it's oddly clever. You move on to a small courtyard, where a group of women gather around a stone oven, not for baking, but for drying out leftover bread, soaked in milk and mixed with onion and herb. The result is a kind of savory pudding, pressed into slices and left to crisp overnight. One offers you a triangle. It's chewy, comforting, and tastes faintly of yesterday's stew. The kind of thing that would taste better on a rainy day with someone humming nearby. Nearby, a teenage boy stirs a pot of scrap pot, a stew made entirely from leftover bits crusts. Bones, greens past their prime, and a splash of sour wine. You dip a crusty heel of bread in. It's rich, earthy, and deeply complex. You chew slowly, realizing this is the flavor of survival and also of accidental culinary genius. Medieval kitchens didn't toss what modern ones might. Every stale crust became a thickener. Every meat scrap a broth base. Even the cloudy dregs of ale had a second life in ale soup. Served warm, with mustard and grain. Historians still argue whether these resourceful concoctions were born of desperation or deep culinary intuition. Probably both. In a tucked-away cellar lit by a single oil lamp, an older woman offers slices of cheese ends pie. It's exactly what it sounds like, scraps of leftover cheese, layered with mashed beans and onions, then baked into a pie shell made from old dough, reworked with lard. You take a bite. It's pungent, hearty, and unexpectedly delicious. She chuckles and hands you a small dish of cabbage jelly. That's right, leftover cabbage water mixed with vinegar and set with gelatin made from boiled bones, served cold with mustard. You steel yourself and try it. It's weird, but refreshing. Somehow, wandering farther, you come upon a pair of boys crouched over hot stones, flattening old porridge into thin discs and roasting them until crisp. Porridge crisps, they say proudly. You take one. It's smoky, slightly sweet, with just a hint of wood ash. You eat it anyway. Someone hands you a hodge. Roll a baked bun, stuffed with whatever was left in the kitchen that day. Yours contains a spoonful of mashed turnip, a sliver of apple, some dried sage, and maybe a lentil. It works. It really works. The deeper into the village you wander, the more these strange leftovers start to feel like their own kind of cuisine. Not glamorous, but honest. Not consistent, but endlessly inventive. You get the sense that in medieval times, a skilled cook wasn't the one who made the best feast. It was the one who could turn yesterday's scraps into something no one minded eating again today. In a shed behind the inn, you find sweet pan drip, a concoction made by collecting the sticky residue from roasted fruit and spreading it on stale bread. You try a bite. It's like medieval yam, but more intense concentrated flavor with a hint of smoke and iron. A man with soot-darkened fingers offers you crust pockets, scraps of bread hollowed out and filled with stewed beans, then fried on a hot iron, crunchy on the outside, soft in the middle, like a medieval hot pocket. You thank him. Mouthful, finally, at the back of a tannery yard. Yes, really. A woman hands out end pies sweetened with mashed pear, spiced with clove, and thickened with leftover porridge. The crust is rough, but flaky. You chew as you lean against a warm wall. Be in hunt. Stars now fully out overhead. You realize something. The food you've eaten tonight isn't just resourceful. It's deeply human. These aren't dishes written down in illuminated manuscripts. They're the meals whispered between neighbors, shared at back doors, and passed down with smudged instructions and knowing glances. made not for show, but for staying alive, for getting by. For comfort, you finish your last bite and smile into the darkness. Stomach content. Spirit quietly full. The leftovers of this world are anything but forgettable. They're its soul. The village lies hushed now, save for the soft crackle of dying embers and the distant hoot of an owl from the woods beyond. Even the dogs have curled into doorways, tails twitching in dreams, bellies probably full of stolen tarts or forgotten bones. And yet, here you are, still wandering, because curiosity doesn't keep bedtime. Your feet take you toward the outskirts, where homes grow farther apart and fences lean like old men listening in on gossip. Here, food is no longer festive or practical, it's personal. Family recipes, regional quirks, things invented in kitchens where flour is counted by handfuls and spices by pinches. You step through a low wooden gate where the smell of roasting grains curls into the air. A man sits near a clay oven, slowly turning a pan of barley mixed with herbs and dried fruit. He scoops out a handful and offers you some. It's warm, slightly chewy, and flavored with caraway and dried sour cherry. For travelers, he says, fills the belly, keeps the wind out. He tells you this is whey bread, something between granola and gritty flapjack. Easy to pack, hard to forget. You chew slowly and nod. He wasn't wrong. Next door, a woman invites you into a small kitchen where she's preparing sleep milk, a warm concoction made from almond milk, honey, and a few crushed poppy seeds. You sip from a cup she presses into your hands. It's comforting, slightly floral, and makes your eyelids heavier than they were a minute ago. Historians still argue whether poppy-based drinks were widely used in everyday households or saved for ritual and medicinal use. Either way, this one feels like it could end a war, or at least a long day. She also offers you a dream biscuit, a hard little round baked with oats, mint, and just enough dried apple to keep things interesting. You bite in and nearly break a tooth. She laughs. You're supposed to soak it first. You dip it into the last of your sleep milk, and it softens, releasing gentle flavors, like a lullaby in edible form. You head farther along the path, guided now by fireflies and instinct. You stumble upon a man stirring something in a blackened pot. Night mash, he says, best eaten with your eyes closed. It's a simple blend of mashed beans, barley, and dried thyme, thickened with leftover beer and just a touch of salt. You try a spoonful. It tastes like midnight. You thank him. At the edge of a hedgerow, you come upon a family roasting slices of turnip over an open flame. We call it turnip toast. The father says, with a wink. Each slice is rubbed with garlic and a little animal fat, then cooked until crisp. One bite, and you understand why it's tradition. The crisp edge, the creamy center, the smoky tang. It's the kind of food that doesn't make it into books, but definitely makes it into memories. A child nearby hands you a small pouch of sleep berries, dried elderberries mixed with lavender and a hint of sage. You chew them slowly, the lavender coating your tongue in a soft, floral haze. You could swear your thoughts are starting to drift, like mist on a pond. You settle by a fence post, watching firelight flicker from a distant window. A woman joins you, and unwraps a cloth to reveal a baked pear stuffed with rosemary and honeyed oats. "We make this when someone's sick," she says, handing you half. The warm pear melts in your mouth, earthy and sweet and spiced, just enough to remind you you're loved. She also shares a slice of moon tart, a flat pastry made with dried rose petals, crushed walnut, and a glaze of wine syrup. It's delicate, odd, and beautiful, like a lullaby in pie form. You don't ask for seconds, not because you wouldn't want them, but because the moment already feels perfect as it is. Near a wooden bench, someone passes out cinders, crumbs of spiced bread, fried in leftover fat and coated in sugar. You pop one in your mouth and find it crunchy, oddly smoky, and sweet, like a snack made from dreams that barely made it to the table. And finally, just before you consider heading back, someone offers a cup of still cider, not fresh, not fermented, but somewhere in between. It's cloudy, a little tart, with notes of apple skin and earth. You sip slowly, your thoughts softening with the night. The stars above shimmer faintly. The moon hangs low and round, and all around you, the world begins its quiet exhale. These foods, so humble, so local, aren't made to impress. They're made to last, to soothe, to remind you that even the simplest things, herbs, roots, berries, grains, can carry warmth and meaning, especially when shared at the edge of sleep. You stretch your legs, pull your cloak a little tighter, and feel the fullness not just in your belly, but in your breath, in your bones. And as the crickets begin their quiet symphony, you rise again, gently, and follow the path back toward the village, wrapped in food, in stories, in the flavors of a world long gone, but somehow still warm in your mouth. The village rests behind you now, a blur of lanterns and lullabies, while you tread along a moonlit path framed by hedges and the soft rustle of sleeping trees. The food has quieted in your belly, settling like warm embers, but memory keeps replaying each flavor, each bite of roasted pear, each spoonful of barley mash, as if your taste buds are trying to preserve the evening's impressions, like pressed herbs between pages. Your path curves toward a cluster of farmsteads, the kind where roosters dream early and ovens never fully go cold. Here, food isn't about market stalls or even supper. It's what gets prepared when the world has gone silent. Midnight kitchens, filled with coals and whispers. You step inside one such kitchen, gently welcomed by the creak of a wooden door and the scent of something gently stewing. A woman, wrapped in wool, hair tied back in a kerchief, stirs a thick pot of bedbread, mush a blend of leftover bread soaked in warm milk and spiced with nutmeg, cloves, and dried parsley. You take a bowl with both hands. It's comforting, barely sweet. With a hint of the day's weariness folded in, she hands you a slice of roasted beetroot drizzled with vinegar and honey. "We eat this when the wind won't let us sleep," she says. It's tangy, grounding, and strangely effective. Beside the hearth, another pot simmers sleep broth. Just water, onion, a handful of lentils, and a sprig of marjoram. Nothing else. You sip. It tastes like patience. Historians still argue whether these late-night dishes served medicinal purposes or were simply the result of long nights and quiet hunger. Either way, the intent was unmistakable to comfort without overstimulating, to fill just enough space to welcome dreams. Another kitchen down the path brews something called moon tea, a steep of chamomile, wildfennel, and crushed pear skins. You hold the cup close and breathe deeply before sipping. The scent alone feels like a weighted blanket on your nerves. A young boy sits cross-legged near the fire, rolling tiny oat balls with honey and dried mint. They help your thoughts slow down. He says earnestly. You take one. It's sweet, crumbly, and oddly clarifying, as if each chew leaves behind a little less noise in your head. A kind-faced elder wraps a cloth around a small jar and hands it to you. For later, she says. It's night butter, made from whipped sheep's milk, leuna, and just a smidge of honey, not for spreading, just for savoring. A tiny spoonful before bed. You tuck it away with reverence, behind one last house. A small gathering of villagers sits around a clay oven, quietly roasting slices of apple and quince on long forks. They call it ember fruit, and the juice caramelizes right where it rests. You're handed a piece, hot and golden. It collapses on your tongue with the softness of a lullaby. Someone sprinkles dried marigold petals into a kettle and murmurs about their grandmother, who swore it helped keep bad dreams away. You smile and accept a second cup of tea. This one tasting faintly of sunlight and dry fields. You notice how the laughter here is quieter now, lower, slower, the kind that makes your shoulders drop and your breath even out. The snacks have changed. 2. Less greasy, less sugary, more about grounding, tethering you gently to the present so you can drift into sleep without slipping away too fast. One family passes around a dish of end-of-day cake, nothing fancy, just crushed nuts, dried fig, and oat flour, baked into a soft bar and dusted with ground mint. You take a bite. It's humble, tender, honest. You sit on the cool step of the farmhouse, legs stretched out, cloak wrapped around your shoulders, and the night pressing in like velvet. In your hand, one last bite of dreid date, stuffed with crushed almond and a sliver of orange peel. It tastes like dusk and memory. Somewhere beyond the trees, a fox barks once. A cartwheel creaks lazily in the dark. Inside the kitchen, someone begins to hum, and you full not just with food, but with comfort. Let yourself sink into the rhythm of it all, because medieval junk food isn't just roasted dough or sticky tarts. It's the stuff people made when they were tired, when they needed laughter, when they wanted to share what little they had in the only way they knew how: one warm bowl, one weird cake, one kiat bite at a time. You stand up slowly, heart softened, limbs heavy, and follow the sound of night bugs back toward the quiet heart of the village. The day is done. The flavors remain. You walk slowly now, not from fatigue, but because the quiet has thickened. It's the kind of night where the silence has weight, and even your footsteps feel like they should whisper. The sky above is velvet black, pinpricked with stars, and the moon hangs so low, it feels like you could reach up and touch the curve of it with one sticky, honey-smudged finger. You drift along a narrow trail, leading through the old commons, what once served as the village's shared grazing ground, but, at this hour, becomes a kind of sleeping field. The grass is tall and damp with dew. The air cooler now, threaded with hints of thyme and sheep and the distant scent of something baking. You blink. Baking. You follow the aroma to a small lean-to beside a shed. A fire burns low inside a domed oven. And beside it, a man dozes with his back against a flour sack. The scent of wake bread seeps from the cracks in the oven. Flatbread infused with garlic, rosemary, and lard. Often baked by those who couldn't sleep and had flour to spare. You break off a piece from a warm loaf left to cool on a plank. The crust is crisp. The inside dense and savory. You take another bite, and it practically hums with late-night solitude. Not far off, two shepherds sit beside a kettle, passing between them a bowl of something they call wind stew beans, cabbage, a dash of onion, and whatever root happened to be lingering in someone's apron pocket. One offers you a ladleful. It's humble and satisfying. The kind of food made from habit rather than planning. You sit with them, the steam curling into the chill, and trade stories you don't even realize you know. Nearby, a woman kneels beside a flat griddle laid over hot stones. She's making griddle fritters, bits of mashed peas and buckwheat flour fried, until crisp at the edges. You take one, steel haute, and blow gently before tasting. It crunches, then melts, tasting of soil and salt and patience. They pass you a drink called bed ale, a weak, slightly sweetened ale, brewed not to wake but to soften, spiced faintly with fennel and lemon balm. It's meant to lull the drinker into drowsiness rather than conversation. You sip it slowly, as your shoulders uncoil and your eyelids begin to droop. Just slightly, historians still argue whether nighttime snacks like these were indulgences or necessities, ways to fend off hunger, or quiet the mind. Either way, they tell a truth. Humans, no matter the century. I find comfort in food when the rest of the world goes quiet. Someone places a hand-carved bowl in your lap, porridge thickened with barley and pear, topped with a curl of goat's butter. End porridge, they call it. You eat each spoonful slowly, watching the steam rise into the stars. It tastes like final thoughts, the kind you don't need to say out loud. A little girl with a braid trailing down her back toddles over and offers you a tiny cake wrapped in linen. Sleepy bite, she says proudly. You unfold the cloth. Inside is a lump of crushed almond, dried apple, and breadcrumbs soaked in cider and rolled in mint. You bite in. It dissolves like a secret you didn't know you'd been keeping. Nearby, a man with sunburned cheeks and a soft grin hands out moon crisps, thin slices of root vegetables dried over embers and sprinkled with ground coriander and honey dust. You take one, and then another, marveling at how something so simple can feel so precise. You linger a while longer in their company. As bowls are passed and coals slowly die down, the food here is a kind of punctuation, little commas and ellipses at the end of a long, well-worn sentence. Eventually, you stand, stretching gently, and follow the path that leads away from the commons and back toward the village. But before you pass the last tree line, you stumble across one final offering, a small wooden table, unattended, holding a covered basket and a note scrawled in charcoal. For the restless, inside the basket, pieces of sweet oat bread laced with lavender and currants, meant to be eaten slowly with eyes half closed. You take one, Press it to your lips and chew with reverence. The taste is gentle, floral, soft at the edges, like the moment right before sleep. You look out over the village rooftops now, only shadows, chimneys barely breathing. Somewhere, a window shutter squeaks. Somewhere else, a cow shifts in its sleep. But all else is still, and in this stillness, this gentle drifting hush, you realize this was never really about medieval junk food. Not entirely. It was about how people, long ago and not so different from you, wrap their days in flavor, in comfort, in shared bites of silly sweetness or stubborn scraps. You take one last bite, and the night, soft as wool, closes in around you. You walk the final stretch back through the village as the night folds in completely, and every sound has settled into softness. Doors are closed, windows shuttered, and even the animals seem to sleep more deeply now. You pass the bakery, where a low orange glow pulses behind the cracks in the oven wall, tomorrow's bread already dreaming. A cat blinks lazily from atop a woodpile and stretches, unconcerned. You, however, feel deeply wrapped in the warmth of everything you've tasted, heard, and wandered through. The last of the food clings gently to your breath: roasted herbs, cider, warm oats, the faintest whiff of vinegar and honey. You press a palm to your belly, full, not in a heavy way, but in a comforting, you'll be okay way. The world of medieval junk food has tucked you in with fried turnips, burnt crusts, crispy cheese, and oat balls, made by sleepy children. You chuckle to yourself as you remember the mustard-filled walnut rood. Surprising, and absolutely unforgettable. It's strange how clearly you can recall every bite, every face, every awkward yet sincere offering made under lantern light. And here's the odd truth. You didn't expect the junk food of the Middle Ages wasn't really junk. Not in the modern sense. Sure, some of it was fried in questionable lard, or tasted like turnip revenge. But most of it, nearly all of it, was made with intention. Not luxury, but love. Not health food, but heart food. It fed stories, soothed bad days, filled in the gaps when dinner wasn't enough. It made you laugh. It made you curious. And somehow, even century later, it's still managing to do that. You pass an old wooden sign, nearly unreadable now, and your mind drifts back to the spiced apple sticks, the porridge crisps, the fire pies. You realize just how many ways there were to say, "I made this for you," even when the ingredients were barely there. Historians still argue whether common folk treated food as an indulgence or as mere fuel for toil. But walking through these sleepy paths, it's clear it was both. And something more. It was a glue for community. A celebration of absurdity. A warm loaf passed under a door when there wasn't much else to give. You reach your little corner of the village, the cloak slipping slightly off your shoulders, and you wrap it tighter again. The scent of roasted grains still clings to it. You look once more up at the sky stars winking like breadcrumbs in a midnight batter and take a long, steady breath. Somewhere, in a parallel present, someone is biting into a bag of chips or spooning cereal in silence, unaware that their small, crunchy ritual echoes centuries of sticky tarts, fried scraps, And barley mash. You smile. Junk food. It seems. Is timeless. You duck into your little cottage. Pull the wooden door shut with a gentle creak. And let the hush surround you like a warm pie crust sealing in every flavor of the day. You lie down. Stillfull. Not just with food, but with stories folded into every bite. The kind of fullness that doesn't weigh you down but lifts you slightly above the mattress. As if you're floating in warm broth. You close your eyes. And in that final stretch before sleep takes you fully, your mind returns once more to the laughing cakes, the eel skewers, the burnt sugar apples. You smile and dream gently of fried dough and lavender bread. The world quiets now, slower than before. And you feel it in your breath. Ich inhale softens. Ich exhale lengthens. The hum of the night presses gently against the windows. No longer asking anything of you, only offering stillness. Let the memory of barley stews and honeyed roots melt into the background. Let the warmth of roasted pears and sleepy oatcakes fade like candlelight behind your eyes. You've wandered through kitchens and alleyways, through festivals and firelit fields, and each step has brought you closer to this, the quiet place at the end of a long, flavorful path. There's nothing left to do, nothing left to try. Your hands are clean, your thoughts are full, and the stories have all been stirred, baked, and tasted. The monks have finished their broth. The children have packed away their laughing cakes. Even the mustard-filled walnuts have been forgiven. The stars overhead blink lazily now, soft and slow, like eyes half closed in comfort. You are wrapped in every strange bite, every chewy crust, every whispered recipe passed over steaming pots. You are part of the hush, so let your limbs go heavy. Let the softness spread from your chest to your toes. The fire's low, the kitchen's quiet, and outside, the wind carries the scent of something faintly sweet, just for you. Sleep now, and if you dream of roasted cheese and cider-glazed apples, let it be soft, let it be sweet.